and to our first presentation, which will be LANSA. With us, we have Eugene from LANSA, and we also have the product manager for our development team here at Alfasoft, David Farnabo.
Good morning, Finn. So yeah, I can shortly introduce myself. My name is David Farnabo, and I'm the product manager here at Alfasoft for LANSA. I just want you to know that if you have any questions or thoughts about LANSA products, just send me an email at david@alfasoft.se, and also I'll be here during the entire presentation.
Eugene, if you're ready, I think maybe you can start your presentation.
To everybody, welcome to the first session of the day from LANSA, entitled Hybrid Low Code for Developers. As mentioned, my name is Eugene King, and I'm a senior sales engineer at LANSA with over 24 years of experience with the actual tool set. So this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about low code and what low code is, and the value propositions for LANSA, and what advantages are. So what is the difference between LANSA and other low-code vendors? And we're going to have a demonstration as well. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to do some coding for you, just so you get a taste of what our development environment is, and then a summary, and then finally Q&A at the end of the actual session. So let's get started. So first of all, what is low code? So low code is, well, it's an alternative method of application development that focuses on templates, wizards, drag and drop functions, automatic code generations, plugins, or pre-built connectors. And this is with the aim of reducing the tedious and time-consuming hand coding part of the development. So low code is designed to allow the developer to focus on solutions rather than focusing on how to code a solution. It employs the WYSIWYG concept. What you see is what you get. What you visually see on the screen is how your application will render. Now, simply put, low code enables the development team to react more quickly than traditional coding practices to changes in the requirements of the business. This allows the business to anticipate and react to changes in the market more effectively. Also, a low code solution should reduce the need for shadow IT and bring control of the business technical resources back into the IT department where it should be. So let's take a look at the promise versus the reality. So building an enterprise grade application without no code. This is true until you need to deliver functionality that doesn't exist. What do you do then? Will you either go back to the supplier and ask them to provide that functionality? And now normally that is at a cost and also a time delay. Or do you do it yourself by going back to the basics, providing the functionality using more traditional code bases like JavaScript or Node.js, PHP, in which case you now have two code bases to maintain. The next one, no programming skills needed. So some low-code solutions don't require programming skills. That is, until you need to provide functionality that doesn't exist, like integrating to an existing system. The other disadvantage with this approach is that it will encourage shadow IT. So the IT department will have to be extra vigilant if they want to maintain the control of their resources. Build apps in hours. So this is another claim that they can build apps in hours by leveraging your existing functionality. That may be true, but to achieve this, you'll have to expose this functionality as RESTful web services already. If that's not done, then you might as well add some time to the project to be able to achieve this. Integrate with anything. Well, that could be true. However, the integration module does not already exist, then you will need to code it. Once again, using traditional coding methods like Java, C# or RPG. So again, integrate with everything? Yep, as long as you can code it, if it doesn't exist. Now, these are just a few of the promises made that have fallen short of the expectations. So what do we need to, so let's have a look and see how LANSA is different to that. So we've defined the term low code, and you may also hear the term no code bandied around as well, and they tend to be a little bit interchangeable. No code is slightly different in that there's less scope for extending the applications, and they tend to generate simpler systems, normally add-ons to your core system. Now, with the hybrid low code, so this is, you may have not heard of this term. This is one that we at LANSA have started using, but it combines aspects of visual development found in your low code and combines it with hand coding found in your traditional development, and it's all integrated into a single IDE. You get the speed and efficiency of low code with the control and power of traditional coding techniques. In the case of Visual LANSA, LANSA's low code platform, the language is RDMLX. We'll see some of that a little bit later on. So RDMLX is a powerful high-level language that allows me to do development of multiple styles of applications. So LANSA has a track record of innovation and of adopting the latest technologies. Now, Visual LANSA itself handles the technical complexities, freeing the developer to address business requirements rather than the technical ones. So as a LANSA developer myself, I class myself as a business developer, not a technical developer. I don't have to concentrate on the underlying technologies. I can just solve business issues. And it makes me as a developer more flexible and responsive to the needs of the business. Do you want to develop applications to run an in-house infrastructure? Or do you want to run one in the cloud? LANSA can help with both. And you don't need to take my word for it. LANSA has thousands of customers worldwide, spanning many different markets and verticals. And a couple of examples for that, you can see some of the logos down at the bottom. So I'm going to highlight a couple that aren't there. So we've got a company called BCA Logistics, which is British Core Auctions. And they are a leading supplier of finished vehicle logistics services to the UK automotive industry. And they're responsible for over 2 million vehicle movements each year. Now, their first LANSA developed web application was a vehicle tracking and management system that allowed the dealers to configure vans and small trucks over the web. And this was developed in 3 months. So from first picking up the product to developing systems and being able to develop nice complex systems was 3 months. And this created a brand new revenue stream for the business. They also developed a real-time workshop management control system, which allows them to manage their workshops in a far more sophisticated way and offer their customers contracts that measure activities in greater detail and in real time. One final example is a company called Becton Dickinson and Company. And this is a global medical technology company that manufactures and sells a broad range of medical supplies, devices, laboratory equipment, and various diagnostic products. Now, they've been using LANSA for their core ERP system since the late 80s. And have recently used LANSA to exchange real-time transactions between its European sales and distribution systems and its global e-business platform. They've integrated their supply chain, linking their business partners, distributors, transport companies, banks, and the end customers. And they're just a couple of the types of systems that you can develop with LANSA. And the way they've been able to do that is we have an architecture out of the box. Okay, so this is what the architecture looks like. Now, LANSA, the company, was started by a team of developers, believe it or not, back in 1987, who were looking at a way of not only developing applications faster, but also reducing the ongoing maintenance cost. With a view to these objectives, the team developed a multi-tiered architecture with a centralized repository containing a business rules engine, and that's what you see in the applications area. Now, this rules engine was supported by what was then referred to as a high-level business language. Today, you'd refer to it as a low-code language. Now, it's important to point out that this is a developer's low-code language. We do not encourage shadow IT or citizen development in any way. It's a developer's tool to aid in their productivity. Now, this architecture and language enables a Visual LANSA developer to develop applications quicker, whether it's a Windows, web, mobile, or an integration application. So whether you're doing A2A or B2B. The architecture also reduces, and this is important for your for the ongoing maintenance of your application. Because of this architecture, the overall maintenance cost, the ongoing maintenance cost of your application can be reduced by nearly 80%. And this is because everything is defined centrally in one location and is very easy to find. And I'll show you when we go into the IDE how we can quickly create impact lists if we make a change to an object. So the architecture also allows developers to develop applications over multiple data sources, aggregating that data into a single application. As a LANSA developer, a table is a table is a table, regardless of where it comes from. Whether you're running an Oracle DB, whether you're running DB2400 on the IBM I or MySQL, it's still a table to me, and I access it in the exact same way. And because of this architecture, I can quite easily swap in and swap out those databases. So we've got examples of customers who started out on the IBM I using DB2400. This was actually a dealership portal that we built, and they wanted to run it in Azure with a PaaS database. We just picked it up, put it onto Azure, and off we went with little to no changes in the way that application actually ran. So that's the portability that LANSA allows you because of this architecture and that application layer. Now, the power of the language has also increased over time to encompass newer technologies. So I myself started in LANSA in 1997, so I'm coming up to my 24th year at LANSA, and I'm still using the same language today that I use to develop applications on the IBM mid-range. But now, because we're working at that abstracted level and the code that's being generated underneath has changed, I can develop modern applications. So if I'm developing server-side code for web pages, I'll be developing it'll generate C, C++. I still use our own language. So if we quickly take a look and see traditional coding techniques. So if I was developing a web page using traditional techniques, then this is just a cross-section of some of the languages and frameworks that you can use. Now, on average, to develop a modern web application, you need at least 5 different skill sets, 5 different languages to allow you to build that web application. The LANSA proposition is, well, actually, why do you need to do that? We have our own language, RDMLX, which stands for Rapid Development Maintenance Language, and the X is the extension. So this is the additional functionality that allows us to develop the modern applications, but it's a single language. So in my 24 years at LANSA, I've never had to go outside the IDE to do development. It's all inside the IDE, and I can develop anything from web to even traditional 5250 systems to Windows applications. Again, all within inside a single environment. So what does that environment look like? So this is where we're going to go on to the demonstration. So first of all, what I'm going to show you is when you first install LANSA, you will get a nice little welcome page that will take you through how to build your first web application. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build the first web application. Once that's been generated, I'll then go into the repository and I'll show you the structures of the repository, and I'll show you various aspects of how we can maintain the code and even how we can change that code. So I'm going to jump over now to my development environment. So when you first start LANSA, you'll be greeted with this welcome screen. And now I'm going to go, yes, please, which will bring up a wizard that'll ask me a couple of questions. First of all, it explains what it's going to be building. So we're going to be building a responsive web application. Explains a little bit about the structure of that web application. So think of the app bar and the menu as a framework. And inside that framework, we have a number of pages, and these are called views. And you'll see those being built in a second. So as we scroll down, we then see, I'd like my application to use this name. So we're just going to give it, I'm just going to leave those as defaults. And we get onto the first of the views. So this is the first of the actual web pages. So this view is going to be called contacts. I'm going to be maintaining a database table, so I can do a number of different things. I can even just create a placeholder, a basic view, and I can add my own code, but we'll be doing that in a second. We're looking at the table called X contacts, so I can prompt on that, and I can even do additional searches of all the tables that are defined within the repository. So in this case, if I just go X, do a find, we can see everything that contains an X in the repository. So these are all the tables that are defined in the repository. Now the green tables are LANSA tables, and the burnt orange tables are externally defined. So if you've already got a database, we can go through a process of what we call make known to LANSA, and we can populate the LANSA data dictionary, and we can write applications over that existing system. That's the table. What do you want to do? Well, in this case, I'm going to do CRUD, so I'm going to create, read, update, and delete. The results list is going to have 3 items, and it's going to have 3 columns. So in this case, it's full name. You can see all the columns that are in the tables. I'm just going to leave that as it is. So that's a view 1. View 2, this is just a placeholder, which is a contacts us. So I'm just going to leave that as default. And view 3, again, is a placeholder with an example chart. So now all I'm going to do is say build my application. So now what it's doing here, it's generating all the necessary code to create my application. So whether it's the client side, so it'll be generating JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. And on the server side, it'll be generating all the necessary C, C++ code for accessing the actual database. So there's the 2 sides of it, but it's the same code base. So I'm still using the same language, and we'll see that in a second when I go into the IDE, that it's using the exact same language no matter whether I'm doing the client or the server. And the communication in the middle is automatically handled by the LANSA middleware. And all we're doing in that is we're just passing JSON messages backwards and forwards between the client and the server. So it's just the data that's being sent. So now I can execute my application. And this is your first look. So this is a responsive web app. So if I resize, you'll notice that the menu disappears. I can go in, look at an about. So again, this is just an example application that you can generate. I'm fine with that one. But as soon as I need something where I'm going to access the data, it'll ask me to sign in. And I go sign in. And it'll then send a request up to the server. The server will process the request and send back a JSON message containing all of the data. So now, if you look as I resize, it'll automatically adjust to fit the actual real estate which is available. So this is what we class as a responsive design. We have a search facility. So if I just want to do a quick search for anything that contains ALL, it then goes up and gives me the results of the search. There we go. Okay. Let's just go back. I don't want that yet. So it gives me, so it's now anything that contains ALL within the actual any of the fields which are being displayed. We have the ability to add a new record. So this is this option here. So this is here's what we call a floating action button. So LANSA has adopted Google Material Design as one of our design principles. So we have basic controls, but we also have material design controls. Material design, if you're not aware, Google spent close to $2 billion researching how things should look on a web page or on mobile applications, from icons to controls to drop downs to how you do input fields. For example, this here. This is an example of material design, as is the floating action button, this little plus sign at the bottom. If I try to add a contact, you'll notice that we get some validation errors. Now, these validation errors aren't contained in the program. These are contained in our rules engine, and I'll show you that in a second on how we can do that. So it will only allow me to enter that data if I enter the mandatory fields. Again, I can just click off that one. Okay, so let's take a look at what was generated as part of that wizard. So I'm going to go back to my screen here, and I'm going to go into the Visual LANSA IDE. But before I do that, just to make you aware that we do have an online training facility, LANSA e-learning, where you can sign up and go through exercises that will introduce you to the LANSA environment and take you through the basics of the LANSA technology, even building sample applications from scratch. So that's one thing that you can look into. They'll give you more details. But for now, I'm going to continue on to use the Visual LANSA editor. So this is my main work area. So this is where, as a LANSA developer, I will spend all my time. Now, when you initially start using LANSA, the details will be over on this side of the screen. So the entire environment itself is customizable to the way that you like to develop. I prefer to have my details of my objects on the right-hand side, and then all of the objects that I'm going to can drag and drop on the left-hand side. Just as an aside here, this entire Visual LANSA IDE has been developed in our previous version of LANSA. So LANSA 14 SP2 was used to develop version 15, which is what you're seeing here. So this is a type of Windows. So this is a Windows-based IDE. We don't have a web-based tool yet, but this is a full Windows-based system. Okay, so I've got that now set up the way I want to do it. From here, you can get to examples and examples. So we ship nearly 200 different code snippets. So if you have a question of how do I do drag and drop on the web, we have a code example that you can use, and you can just cut and copy that code into your own program. Developer Center, this is where you can go to see our various forums, our blogs, our support. So if you want to access LANSA support directly, you can log support calls through our support portal. So and our documentation. So you can get to our documentation from that as well. So on the left-hand side now is our repository. So this is where we've got defined all of the different components that we use within for our development. So when we look at things like fields that we drag onto a screen, or our web pages. So this is our front-end web page here, and a web page is made of views and dialogues. So you can see everything here, but because I use the wizard, I'm going to go to my favorites tab. You'll notice that it generated a tab for me and now has listed all the objects that I've created. Okay, so my dialogues, which are modal forms. So when I went to add a customer, you saw the pop-up box come up. That's a dialogue, that's a modal form. Okay, and our views, which are our individual web pages. If I wanted to find out where a particular view is being used, I can just do a right click and I can look at cross references. So now if I want to make a change to that view, I can say, well, what do I need to change? Well, actually, you can see that we use a server module called My2Charts. We also use my two charts, and it uses that as well for that. Okay, so we can see exactly what each one of these is using. And I can even go from here and I can open it up from this one here. So it's all context sensitive from within inside the environment. And this is why the maintenance burden has been reduced, and it could be reduced by up to 80%, because I can quickly create an impact list if I make a change and see exactly where I need to change that. And one example of that is I worked in the year 2000 on millennium proofing systems, changing date formats. So we had a customer who had both LANSA and RPG4 and RPG2 systems, and we needed to extend the dates from 6 to 8. That was all well and good. LANSA, it was done within 2 months with full testing. With the RPG and RPG2, it took 18 months to actually do that. And the systems were a similar size. And that's because of this centralized repository. It makes things very easy to navigate around and to access. And even as a developer who's not worked on a specific system, because I am a LANSA developer, I know how to get to where I need to go. And that is an immense benefit of using this sort of development environment. So another thing I wanted to show you was the business rules. So here we see the table. So as I mentioned, I can quite easily go in and I can import table definitions from other databases, whether that's remotely or whether that is on your system, on your main application server. It really doesn't matter. We just create a connector and we can import that table definition, and we can start writing code over the top. We don't change that definition in any way. We just can start writing code over the top of it. Or, as you can see with the green one here, this is a LANSA defined table, so I maintain this with inside LANSA. So if I double click that, I'll open up the definition in the main work area. So now we can see all the columns in the actual table itself. And you'll notice we've got some columns in blue here. For example, the contact full name. So this is an example of what we call a derived field. So this is made up from fields that are in the table, but don't exist on the table itself. And these are what we call programmer's creature comforts. So rather than writing this little bit of code snippet in the program, I just write it as part of the virtual field, the derived field, and that's it. So now as a developer, I can just drag and drop that onto my web page or Windows Form or mobile application, and it'll automatically do that for me. It'll already do that concatenation for me. And there's the full address as well, a little bit more coding in there for that. But what I really wanted to show you are the rules and the triggers. So rules, think of for your traditional database management as constraints, but we're not constrained to a specific database. So because we have this at a higher level, these constraints are portable, as are the triggers. Think of triggers as stored procedures. If your database already has stored procedures, we can call those as well. Okay, so we're very open the way that we integrate with existing systems, and we empower you to be able to develop new systems over the top of that as well. So if we look, for example, at the last name, so that you saw this validation rule get triggered. So this is the validation rule here, and it says that the contact last name can't, if it's greater than 0, then you go next, else it's an error. So that's automatically handled. That's in the repository. And what that does, it guarantees that the data, no matter what application is inserting that data, is correct. So whether it's a mobile, whether it's a Windows, or whether it's a web application, or even straightforward integration, just a A2A style system, it makes sure that the data is correct before it is written to the database. And there are a number of different types of rules that you can add. So this is a very simple one. So whether it's a list check, a range check, we can do lookups. We can look up external tables and check to see if something exists before we write it, or if we want to delete something, for example. So we want to delete a customer, but they've got some outstanding orders. You're not allowed to delete that customer because they've got outstanding orders. And we can do simple logic checks and complex. So if you've got some callable code that we can use to validate data, then we can use that complex logic, or you can create your own. We also have quick rules. So these are really aimed at web development, because these are the common validations that you would find on a web page. Specifically, this is an email address. This checks against industry standard patterns on the format of the email. And if it doesn't match the industry standard, then it fails the validation test. Likewise, with the validation of the actual password. So I don't have to physically do anything with it. I just add that validation rule to it and it will be applied. Okay, so there's less coding for me to do. And this is part of the reason, again, for the reduce in the maintenance overhead, because all of these validation rules are stored centrally. So if I needed to make a change to this validation rule, I can do. And that change will be applied to all systems. Yeah, so I make that change in one central location. I don't need to change it anywhere else. So now let's take a look at the actual web page itself. So I'm going to open up my main 2. And here you see the basic web page. So as I mentioned, so this is my apps bar, this is my menu system, and these are my various views that we have. Okay, so there's my default view, there's my charts, there's my contacts, there's my home page, there's my styling and quick links. So I'm going to go in, and what I do is going to edit one of these views, and this is going to be the contacts. So again, I can come up here and open it from here by double clicking or doing right click, or I can come in here and I can open it up from here. And then this gives me the actual component. So here we see the main list, full name, full address, email address, and then these are just to illustrate what the list will actually look like. So I'm going to make some changes to this. What I want to do is add the mobile phone number to this. Now I could go into the source code and I could make a change in the source code, but I'm not going to do that, not at this point. I can do it all from the WYSIWYG editor, and this is where the flexibility comes in. So I can use drag and drop to design something, but then I can edit it. Likewise, I can generate something with a template and then I can edit it, and that's where the power comes in. So I'm going to go in here, and let's say the mobile phone number, I'm going to drag and drop that onto the screen here. Now you'll notice I can drag and drop that around. Sorry, I did a Control Z. Let's just drag that back on there. So I can drag and drop that around with ease. Okay, that's no good for responsive design. So if we take a look at the email address, we'll notice that I can't actually move that around. That's because we have a layout manager that controls how these fields are viewed, and that's where the responsive design comes in. So as the size changes, the field that we put on there needs to be able to move with the rest of them. So if I keep email address highlighted and go up to layout, you'll notice that we've got a 1 column, 1 row, which is the instance list that we've got here, the results list, that the item has been aligned left, it's fitting the width, and it's flowing from the center, and it's got a margin of 86 and 56. Okay, let's repeat that. So I'm going to now go here, row 1, column 1, center left, fit both, flow down, margin left 86, margin right 56, just like that. Okay, but it's still too big because it's got a little bit more space than the rest of the field, so I need to adjust the height. Now I could do a right click and I could go to the definition and I could modify that with inside the code, or I can come over to the left hand side, and this is why I like the the Details tab displayed, in that I can then see all the properties, events, and methods for any object that I have highlighted. So I'm going to go into the property here, and I'm going to scroll down until I get to height. I'm going to change that to 20. And as you can see, I can actually change everything from this properties sheet. So I didn't need to use this layout manager. I could have just changed everything from directly on the properties sheet, or even inside the actual code. So we don't restrict what you do. So if I go to the definition there, you'll see that there's the definition for it. And these are the properties which I've actually set. So we don't restrict you on what you do with the actual code. So you can do as much drag and drop design as you like, or you can go in and you can code it directly. It's your choice the way that's done. Now that's it for the client. That's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to compile that. So compile that, and we'll generate the JavaScript, the CSS, and the HTML for that specific view. Now I need to go and have a look at the server module for it. And for that, I can just come onto this cross-reference one here. It's not there yet. Where am I looking? Repository, design. I can come here. Where are we? Go to definition, save. Okay, not able to do that. Okay, so we go back here and we have a look, and we can look at our server modules. So I can access the server module here, or if I want to, I can go into the actual source. So if we go here, we can see all the routines that have been generated, and the one that I really want to go to is this called refresh, because this is the one. So this is where I'm instantiating the object, or the connection, if you will, to my backend system. And this is my server module, which has been created. This part actually calls the server module. So find, execute asynchronously. Now we have got two modes of execution. We can do it directly. So that means we make a call to the server, we wait for a response. When the response comes back, we continue. Or in this case, we're doing it asynchronously, where we make a call to the server and we carry on doing things. Then once the response comes back, it triggers this event here. And all this event is doing is just selecting from the list and then populating the list on the actual screen. So that's all that code is actually doing there. But that's already been done for us. But let's have a look at the server module, because I need to make some changes. I'm going to open that. So this is the server module now. So a server module will contain one or more server routines. So a server module sits on the server. So this is backend logic now. And each server module will have one or more server routines. And think of these as APIs. So if I need to call another program on the server, I will call one of these APIs. And the first thing you need to do as part of that definition is define the inputs and outputs. So the first input here is the string for the search that I showed you, and the output is the list. Now, if I need help on what the commands are, I just press F1. That'll then pull up all the help that you need regarding the list parameter. Likewise, if I want help with the parameters, I press F4, and that will then bring up the parameter list. And I can see all the parameters for that specific command. In this case, I want to change the definition of the list, so I can do right-click, list, go to definition. So I don't need to scroll through. This is a fairly easy program because there's not very many lines of code. And that's another point as well. You'll find that a lot of LANSA programs are small modular style programs. So very rarely do you write one more than 600-700 lines of code. Yeah, most programs tend to be between 300 to 400 lines. This is just a very simple example. So I need to add a column to this list. And to do that, I can just press space. As you'll notice, I've now got a prompter saying, what do you want to add? Well, I'm going to add a field, and it's going to be called X, Control Z, Butterfingers, X contact mobile. There we go, mobile phone number. That's it. That's all I'm going to do for that. I've just added that column to that list there. All right, if we look at the logic for this. So this is taking the search parameter that we entered and just pushing it up to uppercase and trimming off any blanks. So they're using intrinsic functions. So this standard string is a field, and all we're doing is just converting it to uppercase and trimming it. And then we're doing a select. And what are we going to select? So this is a multiple fetch from a table. We're going to select the fields that are in the list from the table called X contacts, and we're just going to ignore any errors or validation errors at this point. We're then doing a little bit of filtering. So you'll see that we're taking the email address, the full name, and the contact full address. We're then comparing it to the actual standard string to see if that is contained in those values. Now, there are multiple ways of doing this. This is the simplest way. We also can use something called Select SQL, where you can build dynamically the SQL statement for that. Again, it's up to you on how you do that. We're then checking for any notes and attachments, and we're just adding those to the list. And then finally, we add it to the list. So I'm going to compile that now. That's as much as I was going to do. Compile that. And then if we go to the open option, I can go back to my main 2. And now I can execute that. And if I've done everything correctly, when we go into contacts, asks us to sign in, and it will it'll now show me the list with the mobile phone number now displayed. So that is just a simple example of how we can use the wizards and we can access the code. And that's the important part. In any of these interfaces, these WYSIWYGs that I can use for drag and drop, we can access the code. Some of this code can be automatically generated, and then I can go in and I can customize it. As I mentioned previously, now I've been with LANSA now for 24 years, and I've never had to leave this development environment to do any additional programming. I've never even had to look at the lower level code. As part of the compile option, you can actually generate the code and you can look at the code. But you know, in 24 years, I've never really had to do that. Okay, so what I've shown you essentially was how you can go through and you can build a very simple responsive web application, and highlighted how, you know, once you've generated that, you can still go in and change the code. Now, the language itself is very powerful, and you'll find that a lot of LANSA developers don't bother using the wizards. They will actually write things from scratch because it's quicker. Yeah, in the long run, you know, they find they have more control than using this various wizards. And LANSA itself is definitely more productive than other traditional coding environments. And you know, you can just give that a try. You can give that a try yourself. Now, just to summarize, so with the Visual LANSA's low-code approach, your development team can build entire enterprise applications, and they can do this more efficiently than any other low-code app builder on the market. And these are custom ERP systems, enterprise application systems. Yep. So things that meet your business requirements, rather than you having to change your business to meet what can be generated, we can create what your business needs. Because Visual LANSA actually provides developers with all the tools they need in one integrated development environment. So whether you want to develop Windows, web, mobiles, desktop, Windows desktop, you can do that with LANSA. Do you want to deploy it on AWS, Azure, or a private cloud? Internal infrastructure, it doesn't matter. You can use LANSA for that. So that concludes this presentation and demonstration portion for this session. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions. So David, any questions?
Hi, Gene. Thank you very much for a very good presentation. It was very interesting. So yes, we have actually received a few pretty general questions, I would say. So I think they will be of interest for everyone listening to the answers. The first question is from Hans. There's a lot of buzz about low-code development in the news. What are the main reasons low-code is growing so fast, and why now?
Okay, it's mainly because of the pressures that are on the IT department and not being able to meet the business demands for solutions, and especially now with COVID-19. So we had an influx. You know, they started reducing the number of developers on their team, so there were several redundancies, and what they want to do is make their existing team members, the remaining team members, more productive. And that's why low code, because then you can meet those business demands with a smaller team. That's the hype, yeah, is that you can develop things quicker with less people.
Yeah, good answer. There's another one. I think you answered pretty much with your e-learning forum, which you have. The question is from Stian. Would I, with limited knowledge, be able to use Visual LANSA without any training?
No.
No.
No. So it depends. You need to have a programming background to begin with. Okay. If you have that programming background, then training, there isn't a lot of training involved. It depends on what sort of solution you want to do. As you can see, LANSA is quite a large platform that allows you to develop many types of applications. But we tend to find that, you know, most first projects tend to be web-based, and in which case we have a 4 to 5 day fundamentals, which teaches you the basics of LANSA, and then a 3 to 4 day web extension that teaches you how to program in web. Now, I can say that a lot of our developers that we have, our long-term developers at LANSA, didn't have an IT background. We had one from a finance. We even had a physiotherapist and a mechanical engineer who dabbled in programming, Excel and Access style sheets, and then made the move over to LANSA. But you will need to have the training in able to take advantage of the repository and how that repository is used.
Yeah, good. I think we have time for one more question. It's more or less the same as the second question we had, but I'll answer it anyway. How would you define a typical Visual LANSA user? What knowledge or education does this user have to have?
As I mentioned, just fundamental understanding of programming. That's it. Yeah. Business knowledge is more valuable than programming experience. So we found that from some of the other tools that we use as well, is that it's the business knowledge which is important. And if you do have an understanding of programming, then you will need to program. So as I say, we don't enable citizen developers. We don't enable shadow IT. You have to have some understanding of programming to be able to use the LANSA technology, the LANSA platform.
Thank you once again. A very good presentation, Eugene.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. So yeah, thank you, Eugene.
Okay, my pleasure.
And if you have any of the attendees have any additional questions, you can send them to info@Alfasoft.com, and we'll reply to them at a later stage. So again, thanks, Eugene. Great presentation.